Is this on now? Yeah, looks like it's working. Okay, let's start with a little bit of hand raising. How many of you have been to a SkeptiCamp before?
Wow.
All right, so there's just a few of you for which you can put your hand down. So there's only a few of you for which this is your first SkeptiCamp. How many of you consider yourselves part of the Skeptics movement? How many of you are pleased that you are part of the Skeptics movement? Not everyone's hand went back up. Okay. Since this is a Skeptics meeting, I'm going to start by describing the foundations of modern scientific skepticism as a movement. There are many events that can be taken as the start, and I like to use the publication in 1952 of Martin Gardner's book, Fads and Fallacies in the Name of Science. How many of you are familiar with this book? How many of you have read this book? Same hands, that's good. So here's Martin. The subtitle of this book gives a very good brief synopsis of the book. An entertaining survey of the high priests and cultists of science past and present. The book is depressively current, despite being older than I am. In 1972, psychologist Ray Hyman was sent by DARPA. Everyone know what DARPA is? The Defense Advanced Research Projects Administration, to the Stanford Research Institute, now known as SRI, to evaluate, anybody know? Uri Geller and his claimed telepathic and telekinetic powers. Here's Ray. And of course he's conveniently holding a bent spoon, which was bent by putting your thumb on the bowl and pushing. As a result of that, Professor Hyman joined forces with Martin Gardner and James Randi, a magician that was appalled to see how many people have been fooled by charlatans, to form SIR, SIR, an obvious play on SRI, where clearly increased sanity was needed. SIR stands for Sanity in Research. I was trying to decide which picture to use of Randy. This was taken at a meeting in Milpitas the end of last month. There was another picture of him and I thought that this would be better. The goal of the organization was to protect both scientists and the public from scams like Uri Geller. SIR joined forces in 1976 with philosopher Paul Kurtz and a group of scientists, academics, and science writers to form, there will be a test later, the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, or SciCop, now known as the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, CSI, not related to the TV shows. Here's Paul. The goal of SciCop was to provide the public and the press with a reliable, authoritative source of information on fringe claims. I know that this history is incomplete, and I should mention, as Susan already did, that I'm far from objective about this because I'm a member of the CSI Executive Council. So when we decide what it is skepticism means, then yes, we decide what skepticism means for us and what we should do. I'm a small part of those decisions. So, skepticism and atheism. Is there a relationship? At first glance, at least to some, these two isms have nothing to do with each other. They simply can't. They are answers to different questions. Atheism is the answer to the question, do you believe the contention that there are any gods or God? The God or gods? There's some contention on this definition, but I think it will suffice for this discussion, and atheism's obvious answer to this is no. Skepticism, on the other hand, is the answer to the question, how should claims be treated? Skepticism's answer is that we should not accept any contention unless there is clear, convincing, objective evidence that it's true. Now, this is even a more contentious definition than the previous one, but again, I hope that it'll be good enough until the Q&A. It's clear that if you accept these definitions, that atheism and skepticism are not necessarily related. After all, you could reject the contention that any God exists for reasons that are not clear or objective. In fact, this is certainly true. At least some of the atheists that I've spoken to have rejected religion for no reason other than they hate it. There can't be a God, I hate religion. Or, as my mother puts it, of course there's a God and I hate him. But if you did come to atheism by way of a clear, objective evaluation of the evidence, that isn't skepticism. For there's no reason to think that this is the reason for any other, never mind all of the things you accept. So we see that atheism is at most related to skepticism.
Yeah.
So you're going to see a bunch of well-maybes throughout this talk. On the other hand, there are others that contend that these isms are inextricably linked. I suspect that all of us have heard some people say that atheism is just skepticism applied to the question of religion. As Susan just said, it's like UFOs. Although some people would probably be pretty upset by that characterization. Consider, for example, this quote from Fighting God by David Silverman, the president of American Atheists. He said, "Skeptics are atheists, at least the good ones. Skepticism applied to religion invariably yields atheism." Anybody disagree with this? Do not raise your hand if you don't want to. Anyone disagree with that statement? I know there's at least one of you. About one more. Okay. So which is it? Is atheism just narrow skepticism or not? And part of the answer to this seems to be a difference in the scope of the term atheist. I think these views indicate that they have included something that's at least related to skepticism in the definition of atheist. The inclusion is the requirement that objective evidence be used to support this conclusion about supernatural entities. This only is barely related to skepticism because the standard evidence is weaker than a skeptic would require, and again, it's only one assertion, so at most we get a relationship. So, not quite clear what's going on there. But, should we care? Does it make a difference? So if you accept my contention that atheism and skepticism are different, then confusing one for the other is a mistake. But does that matter? Well, if it matters, is it good or bad? And once you decide whether it's good or bad, is the effect large enough to care about it? Now, as a truly, particularly pedantic skeptic, my answer to the question is, of course it matters, it's wrong. And truth matters. And I think we can all agree that truth matters. I think if there's anything that ties the skeptic community together, it's that truth matters. Unless I'm wrong about that. I'm not sure. But not everyone is as pedantic as I am, and that's a good thing. So we can't really be sure. So, is it good or bad? Well, if there's one thing that skeptics hate, it's sloppy thinking. And getting something wrong is sloppy thinking, so obviously it's bad. Atheists, it can be argued, differ from skeptics largely in what they consider to be important. Atheists see religion as one of, if not the ultimate evil in the world. They also have a larger set of issues. that are important to them. Consider a pretty obvious example, separation of church and state. This is a central issue for many atheists and most atheist organizations. But although it is important to many people that call themselves skeptics, it is simply not an issue relevant to skepticism. So why does this matter? Well, it's a question of resources. Both resources from an organizational point of view and just time. There are only so many things that you can beat your head against. Anyone feel like that's what most of the causes they're working on consist of? Just beating your head against the wall? But if it brings in a large enough number of allies, then that would seem to overwhelm the harm that's done because it's wrong. The skeptically minded atheists I know, as you would expect, think that skepticism benefits a lot from the support of the massive number of atheists. I know of no data available to answer this question, and when thinking about it, I can't even imagine a way to objectively evaluate this. So again, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. How else can it help skepticism? And here I'd like your help. What am I missing? I don't see any other way in which encouraging, welcoming atheism in general into skepticism helps skepticism, other than more warm bodies to fill chairs and, as a board member of CFI, to pay dues and give donations. Donations are always welcome, especially for Monterey County Skeptics, now that you're a 501c3, great, although unless you itemize your taxes, it's not going to be deductible starting next year. Any ideas? How else does atheism help skepticism other than more people? Yeah, that was my answer too. Yes?
Because truth matters.
But then that's a particular thing, but atheism concentrates on one particular area of truth. If you think the truth matters, and you're really, that's what you're all about, you're a skeptic. So that's great, but anything else? Yeah?
Just one thing that occurred to me is a lot of times, or sometimes, atheists seem to have a chip on their shoulder and a victim mentality.
Right, so that's why atheism doesn't help. I'm looking for what atheism does help. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Yes?
Atheism or religion is a subject that a lot of people are interested in. So, which you refer to as warm bodies. Thank you very much. But that could be a way to induct people into skepticism overall.
So as an introductory example.
As an introductory example.
Gateway drug. Thank you for that, Jay. Yeah.
Okay. I have an example.
Yeah.
I gave a talk on atheism
Right.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
On this platform.
Yeah. No,
but then I got introduced to a lot more than I was hoping for. So.
A lot more than you bargained for. Okay, thank you. That's a good one. Yeah.
So I would say it's really important to have these different movements and to have close connection, because as you say, there are different emphases in that, one group is saying that we're skeptical about religion, we have other reasons to be together, so we're skeptical about these other things, and they overlap a lot to I would say, have really close ties with atheist organizations, because there is so much common ground, but to feel free to have different priorities.
So that's the they're good as warm bodies, but not only for filling chairs and for giving money, but for having an actual presence in the community.
So you have to have alliance, and to think this great thing about this skeptical atheist, knowledge and movement sphere is, unlike some religions, you can be members of all the organizations if that fits your priorities. So you can't
as long as you're a member of CFI, it's fine. Okay, so thanks. That's two very, very good additions, and I'll keep those in mind. And then there are the obviously absurd absurdly obnoxious people that call themselves skeptics but are really just skeptical about religion. People with chips on their shoulders, people who can't seem to tell the difference between I hate this and it's wrong. And I don't want anything to do with them. And I think you all know what I mean. So, when I started working on this talk, I was pretty confident that the definition I gave of skepticism would be accepted by the vast majority of skeptics. After doing some reading and the best way to do research these days, YouTube viewing, I'm not so sure. Let's consider two different things as important aspects of skepticism. There are many nuances that are being ignored in these simple sentences. Please take it for granted that I've thought about your objections and just consider the larger issue. But this is a skeptics meeting, so yeah, right, that's not going to work. Anyway, please don't think this is an exhaustive list and enjoy the animations. Extraordinary testable claims should be evaluated and acceptance given, typo, only to those that pass the test. That's contention number one, or candidate number one for a central theme of skepticism. All of us are subject to cognitive biases and illusions, so we must train ourselves and others to be skeptical of our conclusions. Sounds familiar? Maybe someone spoke about that earlier today. By a show of hands, who thinks that number one is more important as a central idea of skepticism? And by a show of hands, you can put your hands down. And you can raise your hands twice, but try not to. Number two is the most important issue or central. Okay. My favorite is number two. I'm just going to go that way. I sent an earlier version of this question to my fellow members of the CSI Executive Council and other people that I consider good skeptics. And as I should have expected, many of the replies were suggestions of how to make the question better. But including the replies from the people in this room. But most people that actually answered the question, including people in this room, said that number two was more important, but that was not far from unanimous. I don't think that would have been true if you had asked the CSI Executive Council or then SciCop back in, say, 1978, just after the thing started. The importance of cognitive biases and illusions for the way they affect the way people think as a universal thing had not yet gained as much traction in the community. Although if there's any group that would have been right up on that, it would have been that one, given that there's a bunch of really top-notch psychologists on board. So, conclusions. As what this slide should mostly say is, well, maybe. Because it's a little unclear, but I think we can come to these two conclusions fairly well. Atheism and skepticism are distinct things, but often followers of one are followers of the other. I was asked by some of my fellow travelers as we were driving down if there was anything I was going to say that was contentious. This is not. Everyone agree?
Yeah.
All right. Skeptics should care because resources are finite, and some atheists just aren't skeptics.
Amen.
So this apparently is also not terribly contentious. So, thank you. Any questions?
So, hold your question, let's do the panel. And that way we can get our questions at the panel. Is that all right with you, Leonard?
So can I get 4 chairs in the front?
As they say, I'm here all day.
All right, well, let's get